I'm back on my shit and I'm saving the culture.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Mostly Wrong Opinions. Yeah, rewind that shit. What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Mostly Wrong Opinions Rewind Edition, featuring me, Tyrone, and that gentleman right there, Devin. What we're going to be talking about today on this Rewind episode is Dredd, 1995 version, and also Dredd 2012 version.
When there is crime in society, there is no justice.
As a city, we continue to grow.
73 citizen riots.
Come and get us! Throw down your weapons and prepare to be judged! Judge this!
Court's adjourned.
This movie stars Sylvester Stallone as Judge Dredd, and it has Diane Lane in there.
Diane Keaton.
Diane Keaton? Keaton. Lane Keaton. Right, Keaton. Not Lane. Keaton. Yeah. And she plays his partner. And it has freaking Rob Schneider in this, man.
That's true.
It was a popcorn movie of the 90s to me. But it was exactly, I feel like I didn't read the comics coming up on that, but I feel like that was more comic book accurate at the time. And there's a little parallel within the movie when it comes to the whole synopsis of the movie. Like, you know, Dredd is a cop, but he's also the judge, the jury, and the executioner. You know, that's the cop. That's their law system there, because it's like they're in this big old city.
Right. It's the future. Well. I think this is kind of important because we're also going to talk about the 2012 Dredd, but it's the future. But it's not. It's way further out in the future than the 2012 Dredd. The 2012 Dredd is like maybe 80 years into the future. The 1995 version of Judge Dredd takes place like 300 years into the future. It's like really far. I was kind of surprised. I think it's like a 25th century or something like that. So it's like there's like a wasteland. I'm guessing there's some sort of nuclear war. I don't know, but yeah. And so now the judges are the law. They are how the law is enforced.
I am the law!
And, yeah, exactly. they're how the law is enforced, and yep, Judge Dredd is all about it.
Judge Dredd is handing out these sentences left and right. You know what I'm saying? And one of them is probably not so just the way he handled Rob Schneider's character.
Well, that was kind of like the thrust of the film, in that Judge Dredd, because he keeps saying "I am the law," and he really is. He interprets the law very, very literally. So if you're loitering, the law says 5 years in the ISO cubes. You're getting 5 years. Goodbye. He's not going to ask why you did it. He doesn't care about your situation. He doesn't care about your woes. 5 years ISO cube. Goodbye.
Megan City Municipal Code 213, willful destruction of property, that's 2 years. Code 310, illegal possession of assault weapons, 5 years. Code 457, resisting arrest, 20 years.
Done. And Rob Schneider, like you said, the movie starts with him just getting out of jail. Yep. Probably for something stupid, and just like, actually no, it was for tampering with a robot. That's why he was in jail. Yeah, and so he just gets out of jail. He goes to his I guess prospective apartment, and it's been taken over by these like thugs and stuff, and they're shooting out the window. Mm-hmm. And just because he's near them, and he hides in a robot, Judge Dredd finds him, and he's like, "Look, you're going to jail. 5 years. Goodbye." And it's like, wait, he was just trying to survive. Yes. That might not have been the most just thing to do, but it was the legally correct thing to do, because Judge Dredd sees everything in black and white. Legal, illegal, done.
Yeah. And lo and behold, there's some things that happen within this film to where it lands Judge Dredd in prison too. And it comes to that there's a man named Rico, and he was so campy and over the top too. boy, was he over the top with his acting. He's like, "Ugh."
Well, I feel like everybody's a bit over the top in this film, but the way Judge Dredd goes to jail, it kind of reminded me a lot of Minority Report. If you remember in Minority Report, the character, I think his name was Anderson, which is funny because that's the name of one of the characters in Judge Dredd, the sequel, 2012 version. But he also interprets the law very literally until he is accused of murder, and so is Judge Dredd. Judge Dredd is accused of murder. He's framed for murder, and it seems irrefutable. There's like DNA evidence, videotape, everything. Right. And he's like, this is not fair. His judgment, while legal, is not fair. And I thought that was kind of like an interesting debate. And so with this movie, I was kind of surprised. We talked about this briefly, but I was kind of surprised that this movie was as dense as it was. There's a lot going on in this 1994 version or 1995 version. I thought this would be kind of stupid and dull.
You thought it was
I was kind of
Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah, I thought this was gonna be a pain to watch, but no, it was actually really enjoyed it. I was surprised that the movie had
a lot of
things
context
to say. That maybe interpreting the law literally is not the right thing to do. So like, I was pleasantly surprised because I'd never seen this film.
Not only I saw it in completion. I think I went to the theater to see this movie because my whole family was a big Sylvester Stallone fan. And the thing about this movie is like not only does interpreting law is not just where it is in black and white. He lost himself. He didn't have no family. Yep. He had nothing. He didn't have no girl, no nothing.
And you were talking about Rico. Rico, to his knowledge, was his best friend, and he judged him. That's how black and white he was.
Haven't you ever had a friend?
Yes. Once.
I want to know what happened.
I judged him.
Walked off all sad and stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, yo.
Yeah. It's like you said, he lost himself. He really turned himself into the literal interpretation of the law, and there's no wiggle room, nothing. And this may not have been the best thing to do, which I was like, oh, that's good.
Now,
that's good stuff.
How he ended up in that place in the first place, Rico was. We find out later in the film that Rico is basically his brother because Judge Dredd and Rico were cloned from the acting general judge, the head top judge, some of his DNA. And
well, apparently it was all the judges' DNA, all the lead judges' DNAs put together.
Disgusting.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so disgusting. You would think it'd come out even way more mutated, but
well, they said they tried to erase all the parts of them that were flawed or messed up and something like that. So
yeah, so
I guess they tried to keep it from being disgusting.
But Rico got a lot of that flawed and messed up behavior, and
it seemed to have all gone to him.
Yeah, and then all the good and positive stuff went to Dredd. So Rico busts out of this freaking cylinder prison, and like this kind of reminds me of Magneto, but instead of
that's true.
Yeah, instead of being a box, he was cylinder. But and he's like, you know what? I'm gonna take back the order of the judges for myself. I'm going to clone myself and destroy all the other judges, including and the first thing he did was frame Judge Dredd for shooting a reporter, and it looked like it was him. He had on the suit. He had the gun. Right. The judge, the reporter was like, "Dredd, no!" That's exactly how he sounds. Dredd, no!
Yep.
Dredd, no!
And it turned out that in the court of law, he was about to get off until they showed the DNA that each of these guns, which the guns are freaking amazing, dog. I love these guns. These guns are one of the best weapons in comic book history to me.
let's talk about the gun for a second, because the guns are super important, and they're actually important for the 2012 version too.
Yeah.
So the guns are coded to only work with a judge.
That's this! Look, give him, man! No, they're booby trapped!
Now apparently it can be any judge can pick up any gun, but when they fire at least in the 1995 version, when they fire the weapon, the bullet takes a sample of the judge's DNA and like writes it on the bullet. So that way everyone knows who fired this gun. So I'm like, okay, that's super interesting. Also, the guns, like you said, I think this was a flaw, but I understand why they did it for the movie. but the guns, you talk to the gun, so you'll be like stun, split shot, hot shot,
Full auto. Rapid fire. Armor piercing. Double whammy.
So you speak into the gun, and the gun will change its grenade, right? You speak into the gun, and the gun will change its ammunition type. I think it's a flaw.
How?
Because now everyone knows exactly what kind of bullet you're using. So if you're trying to sneak in somewhere, you can't whisper? You're gonna whisper to the gun?
Yes.
No. You need a button. It doesn't make any sense to be talking out loud. This is why the police use hand signals and stuff like that. But whatever. It's a movie. When I was watching it, I was like, speaking to the gun seems like a big liability. But anyway, the guns are very cool. The guns are very cool, and they're super pivotal in why Judge Dredd ends up going to prison in the first place. And apparently prison is just Aspen. You go to Aspen, and the whole city of Aspen is a big penal colony.
Right.
It's just a big prison.
Well, on the way there, Rob Schneider and Sylvester Stallone, they end up breaking out, and it was cool to see them sitting there in shackles, and he was like, Dredd, and then he stopped him, and the guy behind him heard, and he got this knife. I don't know how they didn't check for this dude's knife on him before he got on the plane.
What the hell? Yeah.
And,
but whatever.
He unlocked his shackles and stuff. But when Rob Schneider was saying that, he said, that's so funny the way he said it. He was like, Mr. I am the law.
Mr. I am the law.
Right. He's like, he said, I didn't do anything. I was just 5 years for saving my ass. And he said that the law is never wrong. And he said, well, how do you explain you being here?
The law doesn't make mistakes.
Really? Then how do you explain what happened to you?
Right. Right.
And it was just cool. It's like the law can be wrong on a lot of instances,
Well, the law needs a human interpretation. You can't just interpret it coldly. Like there's evidence that we should be looking at. But again, Judge Dredd, he doesn't really do that. He doesn't really interpret the law. He just rules it out.
Right. They get into a scuffle with the dude that unshackled himself, and then the plane goes down. They crash land into this area, and this area it has a whole bunch of cannibals there. That's where we find out about the lead general. It's a whole bunch of stuff that happened where the lead general, he got casted out because he wanted to save Judge Dredd, and they meet up out there, and he's ended up getting shot, and he was like, basically like, you're my son, and
Right.
and Rico's your brother.
Right. There's a whole family thing going on because, like you said, they combined all their DNA to create these two clones. And from what I understand, I've never really read the comic books that much, but from what I understand, I think that's pretty accurate. Like, I think Judge Dredd is actually like some kind of clone, something that's been created. So I think that's pretty accurate to the comics. I've only read like one or two, but
Right.
I think that's correct.
It was a lot of cheesy one-liners.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And he was like at the end, when him and Rico was fighting, and he was like on the ledge, and it was like there was a Statue of Liberty, because they moved the Statue of Liberty in the middle of this place, and they're fighting inside of the head, and he was like, He's like, you wanted to be normal when we could have been gods.
Right.
The charge of being human when we could have been gods.
And he got the upper hand on Rico, and then he pulls him down to him to whisper this one-liner. He's like,
Court's adjourned.
court is adjourned.
Exactly. The whole movie is like full of one-liners, and the one-liners are kind of predictable too. You almost know what they're gonna say.
Let me guess. Life. Death.
Like, oh, I know what you're gonna say. I know, and he says it, of course.
Not only do we know what he's gonna say, he knows what what people are gonna say.
Yeah.
I knew you'd say that.
He's like,
I knew you'd say that.
Exactly. I knew you'd say that. Yeah. So the movie, it seems like everyone in this movie is having a lot of fun. Like we talked about that on a previous episode about how you can tell people are just like enjoying themselves. Now I don't know about Sylvester Stallone. I'm not sure if he was enjoying himself, but literally everyone else around him, it seemed like they're having a fucking blast. Like everyone, like Rob Schneider, he's hamming it up so much. And you could tell that a lot of his lines he's just doing off the cuff. Like there's that one line when they're flying on their like that hover bike or whatever, and it plummets down. And they almost hit the ground, and Rob Schneider's like, "You might have to clean this seat the next time you ride it."
Dredd, you may want to wash this seat after we get off the bike. Sorry.
I think he ad-libbed that line. You could tell. So it's like everyone's having a good time, and I had a good time because of that. Like you can really tell that the people who made this film really enjoyed it.
Exactly. And I want to talk about like the set design.
Yeah, I want to talk about that too.
Man, the set design on this, it must have been like a lot. I don't know what a lot of money was for production design back then in 1995, but I feel like they put a lot into it, because if you look at like the green screen looked really good. The hover bike looked like it was freaking hovering.
Yeah, and I think it's because a lot of it was done with. So some of this stuff, you could tell that they shot some of it like in like factories and stuff like that, which gives the movie like this like nasty grungy look. But then they use a lot of miniatures and a lot of matte paintings, and you don't really see any miniatures at all anymore, or matte paintings. Those are like old school type stuff. But because it's actually a physical thing, it does give it some weight, and it does look, to me, it looks way more real than like a CGI city. Like it looks real, and like you said, the effects are super convincing.
For me, watching this movie, when it comes to the set designs, it actually kind of reminded me of some of the set designs for Total Recall.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because they're both set in the future. They both I loved how like in the 90s how set designers thought how the year 2000 was gonna look.
Yeah, exactly.
and even in Back to the Future when they thought how a car was gonna look.
Right.
It's like, because Back in the Future, especially in the second one, part 2, he went to the year 2015.
Right.
None of that looked like it did.
Right.
In the movie, like what it is really now. They did get some things right about voice calling, and what this is.
Right. Right. That's true.
I just really liked it, man.
Well,
I really liked it.
Before we move on to the 2012 Dredd, I think it's important that we talk about Sylvester Stallone's characterization of Dredd, Judge Dredd, because it's super important when you compare that to Karl Urban's characterization of Dredd. So Sylvester Stallone, when you first meet Dredd, there's a shootout in the street, and these two other judges are like ducking for cover, and they're scared, and they ask for backup, and of course, Sylvester Stallone's like, I am the backup. Backup's here. He does his thing.
Backup's here. Yeah.
But they do something interesting.
One-liner.
Yeah, exactly. They do something interesting where he gets out and he just gets off his bike and he's just got his chest out and everybody's shooting and he's not getting hit. And you're like, what? This is silly. How is he not getting hit? And then the movie's like, the guns, their range is 300 yards. They're 400 yards away. You're totally safe.
Judge Dredd, take cover! They're firing 20mm caseless Fletcher rounds at 300 meters. The effective lethal range is 200 meters.
you're safe.
So I'm like, oh, that's so they not only is Judge Dredd tough, but he's like smart.
He's smart.
Yeah, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's a good way to introduce the character. He's tough, smart, brave. Got it. He's also loud.
Yeah.
He's Sylvester Stallone. So this Judge Dredd is loud. He's always shouting and yelling.
I am the law. Drop your weapon. These plugs are under arrest.
But then you compare that to Karl Urban, who's a lot quieter. His Judge Dredd, he almost whispers most of his lines.
He was menacing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The other Judge Dredd. Also, the 1995 Judge Dredd, they make a point that Judge Dredd is different, that he is special, that he is better. Like he even wears different armor than most other judges. I guess to show his stature. Where in the 2012 version, Judge Dredd, he's just another judge. There doesn't seem to be anything special about him. He's just a guy. Yeah. All judges look like that. All judges behave like that. He's just a guy. So I think it's super interesting where he's depicted more like a superhero in the 1995 version, and
I was about to
just
say
like
that.
a schmo in the 2012 version.
I'm gonna rate this movie. I'm gonna rate this movie an 8 out of 10.
Okay. Yep, yeah. I'll give it an 8. I think it's a good movie. It's a fun movie, and it's a better movie than I thought it was going to be. Because again, I this was like one of those movies that was always on TBS. You know what I mean? So I always like caught it like I always caught it like in the middle. You know,
TBS, TNT.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. I always caught it in the middle, and I always tuned out.
Throw a little USA in there.
Exactly, USA. Yep.
Dash of Spike TV.
Yeah. But I always caught it in the middle, and then I always tuned out like during the commercial break because I'd leave and never come back. So I just never finished this movie. I'd always seen it. I'd seen it in pieces, but I'd never actually watched it to completion. And I was kind of surprised that there was a lot here. The movie's doing a lot.
It's a lot of underlying things, and it kind of just, excuse me, it kind of made me think of I don't know. It made me think of a lot of the stuff that's going on with the policing of today. It's like this is a dystopian future that's ran by. There's no government. There's the law is the government, and the policemen are the law. And in real life, they're acting like they're judge, jury, and executioner by the way they out there.
There's a lot of Judge Dredds. I'm glad you mentioned it because it was hard not to watch this movie and not think about the current events that are going on right now. So with people not caring about their fellow man, about especially the people, the law enforcement and law enforcers, not really caring. They just say, look, it's legal for me to shoot you now, so I'm going to shoot you. And that's the end of it. There seems to be no humanity in it. And that is who Judge Dredd was in the beginning of the film. He was
by the end,
right? He may have been different. We don't really see too much of him at the end of the film. He's kind of like rides off, so we don't really see him change too much.
After a kiss,
yep, he does kiss. The kiss is important because that's like showing that he's got some humanity now. Like maybe he's more than just a metaphorical droid, some kind of robot,
right?
For law enforcement.
So you give it an 8, I give it an 8. Check that movie out, guys. It's on Hulu right now.
I knew they'd do that.
And so is this, the 2012, just simply called Dredd, not Judge Dredd, Dredd.
800 million people living in the ruin of the old world. Only one thing fighting for order in the chaos. The men and women of the Hall of Justice.
I remember when this movie came out, you hit me up and you was like, "Did you see Dredd?" I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Yeah."
It was pretty good.
We had no business being that good.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what you said.
Because I thought it was going to be terrible too. I was like, I don't want to watch no damn Judge Dredd movie. But I was like, whoa. But this movie is very different. I think it's so different from the 1995 Dredd that it's hard to really compare. Like I'm going to try and compare, but I think some of the comparisons are reaches because this movie is wildly different in tone. The characterization of Dredd is completely different. The scale of this movie is a lot smaller. This is a much more small, claustrophobic movie compared to the big, sprawling, epic movie that the 1995 Judge Dredd was. So there's not a lot of overlap here.
And it was meant for 3D.
What? Oh yeah, you could tell. You could tell. You could tell because people do stuff like this. They're like. and when you're watching it, you're like, what's going on here? But they kind of make it okay because when people do stuff like that, they're usually under the influence. But we're gonna start talking about the plot.
True.
We're gonna start talking about the plot here in a second. But go ahead.
Like you said, Dredd is kind of this movie is I don't want to say it's based in a more realistic tone,
but it's a lot more grounded.
It's a lot more grounded, and Dredd is like a beat cop,
right?
But the same rules apply when it comes to judge, jury, and execution.
Right. He's and it's super important because you're talking about how this one feels a little more realistic. Again, it's important to note that this movie does not take place 500 years into the future or 300 years or whatever that Judge Dredd took place in. This thing takes place, I think the year is like 2080 something. Like, so it's not that far. It's like, just a few decades into our future. So because of that, instead of people riding hover bikes and stuff like that, they're just riding motorcycles. The cars look more recognizable. The buildings look more like real buildings. So things feel a lot more grounded. Like the Statue of Liberty isn't just in the middle of the city or something crazy like that. This looks more like if New York and LA just like slammed together and created this one big city.
It was actually Boston and DC.
Well, they said it stretched from Boston to DC. So
Boston to DC. So it was probably a lot more.
It's huge, right?
Yeah.
It's humongous.
So,
but the whole movie takes place, even though Mega City 1, I think that's what's called Mega City 1.
Mega City 1, yeah.
Even though Mega City 1 is huge, this movie doesn't try and show it all, kind of like in the 1995 version. This movie takes place in one building. And the building's called Peace Trees, and it's a humongous building. The building's huge, but it's still the whole movie takes place in this one building. They literally close the door and shut it down, and no one leaves, which is probably really smart to keep the budget nice and small.
Right. And that one building is ran by a drug lord. What was her name?
Mama.
I forgot her name. Mama, yeah. And Judge Dredd and his rookie Anderson, and the thing I did not know this, or because I didn't read the comics. There's mutants in this because Anderson is a mutant, and she's a telepath, and she could read minds and get to your mind like Professor X type of stuff, And she failed her exam. That's what. But the leading officer wanted to have her with Dredd anyway to show her the ropes.
Right, and this is kind of important because to show a little bit of Dredd's growth that happens in this film. Because she fails, but she doesn't fail by much. She just barely fails the exam. And so the lead officer is like, well, she didn't fail by much, and she's kind of got a lot of power, so maybe we'll just see if she can work out. Dredd is like, what the hell? She failed. Passed, failed. Black, white. She failed.
Black, white. That's it.
Why is she here? You can go. Goodbye. You're dismissed. That's what he thinks, You failed. But again, he's not. He's interpreting the law literally, and he's not putting any humanity in it. He's not seeing that she might have any other useful skills. He's just like, she failed, get her ass off the street. She can't be here. It's all deep end. That's what he says. It's all deep end.
Sink or swim. Chuck her in the deep end.
It's all a deep end.
There's no shallow end here.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said, throw her in the shallow end. He's like, it's all the deep.
Exactly.
And I can say for sure they push for a hard R.
Yeah, it's very violent.
Boy, it's very violent, and just to describe the intents of of how violent it is, in like one of the opening scenes, Mama is taking care of her business, and she throws some people over the top balcony,
right,
all the way down to the concrete because they were stealing product.
Yeah,
right?
and she skinned them first.
Skin him. Toss him over the balcony.
She skinned them first, yeah,
and then threw them off.
They just failed.
Yep.
And they gave them slow-mo. That's the drug that's the top-notch drug in the city
that she's producing.
And I forgot Wood Harris was in this movie, man. I was like, hey, Wood Harris.
Yeah, that's true. He was.
He was her right-hand man. And
but you were talking about the violence, and I think I kind of liked how they characterized the violence, because the reason why Judge Dredd and his rookie Anderson go to Peachtree's is it seemed like this was just a random choice. They were like, you pick a place to go, any place, doesn't matter. They're all the same. So she's just like, Peachtree's, and it's terrible. It's a nightmare place. It's awful. But they seem to insinuate that it was just like almost any mega building looks like this. Almost any mega building is just as violent, just as nasty. They just picked one. This might not even be the most violent one. This is just the one that was close by. Like, dang. That was a pretty terrifying characterization of the city.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at like they had like an overhead view of the whole city, like each one of those buildings looked exactly the same,
identical.
And it kind of make me think, like, in each one of those districts, do they have like a mama of their own?
That seems to be like the insinuation.
Yeah. So, because there's a top tyrant at the top, got to be taken down.
Right.
The action in this movie, like I said, it is violent, and they also do the same thing with the gun where you speak to it, and I kind of like the way the first thing that happened, and I was like, oh, this is different, because one of the perps that he was chasing in the beginning of the movie, he has a hostage in this like little hot dog stand thing, and then he was like, it's okay. He said, calm down. Like, I understand what you're saying, hotshot. And he's like, what you saying? He was like,
I said, hotshot.
Hotshot. And he shot him, and the freaking flare went in his mouth and burned the inside and the back of his skull. I was like, that's pretty gruesome.
And then to make it seem even worse, after that, the guy's head like catches fire and he falls over and his face is like melting. And then there's like the PA is like, bing bong, hi, hello. This mall is closed temporarily for cleanup. It will reopen in 30 minutes. Thank you. And there's like a little machine cleaning up the bodies. I'm like, God, that's it.
It's like just normal stuff that happens in this world.
That guy's face melting and him falling over, and this is just a 30-minute break in the day. Like, dang. Yeah. This movie is very brutal, very harsh, very violent.
Yeah, man. Now back to Anderson. She is, with her powers, kind of makes her the moral compass. You know, where, you know, she can see the person's inner thoughts and be like, because there's a certain part in this movie where they're kind of held down and they're trapped inside the building because Mama knows that they're there to try to stop her. So she sends out a call all over the building and says, you know, first person to kill to kill the dreads. I mean, the judges. Yeah, that's it. The dreads. Kill the judges. Kill the judges. She offered them money, and she said, whoever that gets in their way, she said, I will kill you and your generation.
Yeah, is that the next and your next generation? Oh, yeah, I was like, holy crap.
I was like, oh my God.
But it's not even just that she said that. It's like how she said it. So Mama produces the drug slow-mo, which slows down time. Apparently, it makes your brain perceive time at 1% its normal speed. So not only does she produce this drug, she clearly uses it. And what's interesting is she speaks like she's always on it. So everything she says is kind of slow and measured. So she's like, the first person to kill the judges, I'll give you money. And if I find that anyone has protected the judges, I will kill you and your next generation. And it's like, whoa.
Peach trees.
This is Mama. Somewhere in this block are 2 judges.
She says it so casually and slowly. You're like, oh my god. It's like you said before, the word menacing. She's very menacing. And she's got nasty teeth and a horrible scar all across her face, and her hair's everywhere. She looks like she smells.
You compare her villainy to Rico's villainy, and Rico is just like world domination.
Yeah, Rico's a cartoon.
And hers is it's cartoon. Hers is just, I just want my block.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want my block with my drugs. You know what I'm saying? That's all I want. And
she's only working this hard because Judge Dredd has decided not to kill her lieutenant. He's decided to interrogate the lieutenant to get information. Now, if he had decided to kill the lieutenant, Mama would just let him go. Be like, okay, great, good, get out. I don't care if you killed all these people. I don't care. Get out. But because he wants to leave with her lieutenant, and the lieutenant is going to break under interrogation, she knows this. She's kind of freaking out because she wants to protect, like you said, her block, her power, and her drugs.
Yep. And the person that can get that information was Anderson, because she can get inside his head, which was trippy. Mm-hmm. Like, whoever wrote that scene was on acid or so whatever. I was like, ew. But that's kind of disgusting. But
and they insinuated that there's more disgusting things that we didn't see, because her lieutenant, he's like, oh, so you're a telepath? What am I thinking right now? And they show it, and it's like some kind of violent sex thing, and she's like, you're only showing me that to shock me. And he's like, oh, if I wanted to shock you, I'd think about this. But they didn't show us what he was thinking.
Nah. Like, what am I thinking about right now?
She just hits him. Boom. Because whatever it was, it must have been terrible.
But I wasn't trying to shock you. If I was trying to shock you, I'd have been thinking about this.
What are you thinking about now, huh?
Like, dang.
But she's the moral compass, because there was a part in the movie where they think that they have them cornered behind this door, where they're in between the actual lab that produces this drug and them, and the people of the tower is protecting it off, and they throw a freaking flash grenade in there, and then they just take him out. And she has the last guy who's wounded there. She looks him in his eye. You could clearly see that he's like, please don't kill me. Mm-hmm. Please don't kill me. And then Dredd is like, what are you doing, rookie? Pull the trigger. He's his crime is attempted murder of a judge. That's the sentencing is death. And she's like, yeah. And she just, boom, shoots him. She thinks about it. And then they have to go through the hallways, and they get inside of this room, and there's a woman in there. And she's like, I'm not going to tell where you are, but I don't want you here, because I'm trying to protect my baby. I'm trying to protect my family.
Right. They go into, they hide out in her apartment. But first they have to ask her to open the door. And she does. Yeah. And she lets them hide out. And so it's like, she seems to be the only reasonable, nice person in the building. Go ahead.
Yeah. And she, we quickly find out by a picture on the wall that the person that she killed earlier within the scene just before that was her husband that was out there looking for them. And it was like, that kind of triggered in her to be like, maybe things aren't as black and white.
Right, exactly.
You know?
Yep.
We shouldn't be just quickly judging someone off the rip. Later in the movie, Anderson gets captured because she took her eyes off the prize when these two little dork kids come out of nowhere trying to kill them, kill Judge Dredd and Anderson. And
it's notable though that Dredd does not kill those kids, because
Yes,
He said that if they continued, they should get 5 years in the juvie cubes, the juvie ISO cubes. But not only did they continue, but they fired at Judge Dredd. We know what that means. That's the ruling is death. But he didn't.
But he said stun.
Yeah, he didn't kill him. He stunned the kids. So I feel like even that was a little bit of Anderson rubbing off on Judge Dredd, because normally he just would have shot those kids and moved on.
Yeah, and be done.
Yep.
Mama, when Judge Dredd was going through and he got on the intercom and he basically said that what was he said a one-liner too. Did he say a one-liner? He said Judgment Day. Yeah, he said Judgment Day.
Did he? He had some one-liners in this, but his again, Karl Urban's delivery, his characterization of Dredd is just different. He's not shouting his one-liners. He's almost whispering them. He's very quiet. He's a much more quiet, much more still version of Judge Dredd.
Mama is not the law. I am the law.
He was on intercom. He said, "I'm gonna make my way up to you," and he said anyone who assists Mama will be charged by the full extent of the law. And then he said, "As for you, Mama, Judgment Day."
And as for you, Mama, Judgment Time.
And she's tired of this stuff. And then Ed Harris. Wow. Wood Harris.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "What? How do you kill this motherfucker?"
Right.
And then she said, "Call the police."
She said just like that. Call the police.
And
Call 911.
and these 4 Dredds come up there.
4 judges.
And earlier in the movie, I keep saying Dredds. Why I keep saying Dredds? Because why I keep saying Dredds? Because it's not no distinguish between the costumes and them.
No, mm-hmm. This Judge Dredd is just another judge. He is not depicted as being special at all.
Yeah. These 4 judges come up the street, and earlier there's 2 judges that came there because Judge Dredd and Anderson was actually able to get outside of the building and communicate with comms to get some help. But these 4 judges come there, and there's like, you're relieved because there's 2 judges in there. You didn't go in because they said there's a fire hazard that went off and the alarm's going off or something like that. And they went up in there. They talked to freaking Mama, and he said 1 million credits, and they're bad guys. And Judge Dredd makes mincemeat of the first one.
Right.
And he had a little tougher time with the other 2.
Yeah. So these judges were corrupt, so they could be bought. They could be bought for 1 million credits, split 4 ways. And what's funny is they were like, Karl Urban's Judge Dredd. He was like, "How much does a judge cost these days?" And the other judge is like, 1 million credits, split 4 ways. And Judge Dredd's like, 3 ways now. So he's got some one-liners in there.
Million. Split 4 ways.
Three ways now.
It was good. You know what this movie reminded me of? And this movie came out before this movie, and it's in the airwaves of this movie copied Dredd 2012. Remember the movie The Raid?
Oh yeah, mm-hmm. It's very similar to The Raid. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, okay, there's a tyrant at the top, and he gets on the intercom and he says that there's policemen in here, got to take them out, stuff like that.
Yep, and they go floor by floor up to the top. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Floor by floor, but it's a little bit more intense. I don't know. I don't know if it's probably equally intense. Maybe.
Yeah, they're very different. They're very different. This one obviously, Dredd doesn't have any like kung fu or martial arts or anything like that, but it's different. But when I was watching this film, 5 minutes into the film, I was kind of depressed at how old this movie looks, because I feel the movie doesn't feel old, but I'm looking at it and I'm like, this movie looks old. Am I old? I guess I'm old now.
Really?
It looked and felt really dated to me. I was kind of shocked at how dated it looked. Because I feel like a lot of movies. This is probably why it looked like a different movie to you. But there's like a lot of movies kind of looked like this in the year 2012. They all kind of had like that same like grimy feel, and I could feel it. Just looked older than I remembered. It made me kind of sad. I was like, oh damn, I'm getting old, huh? This is an old ass movie, and I remember seeing this. I feel like I was a full grown adult. I saw this movie.
Yeah, man. So with the takeaways of this movie, man. By the end of the movie, at the beginning of the movie, he says all the things that can get her saying that she failed.
Incorrect sentencing is an automatic fail. Disobeying a direct order from your assessment officer is an automatic fail. Losing your primary weapon or having it taken from you is an automatic fail.
Yes, sir.
And one of the main things was losing the gun. You fail. And she lost her gun. But she's like, I already failed. And she's like, I'm just here to complete this out because I want to help these people. And, which was her moral compass and stuff like that. Because these people don't deserve to die. They get to the top of this
which
thing.
Which by the way, Dredd criticized her for. He was like, "Oh, okay, you want to help people?" It's like, whatever. that's stupid. He was like, "Look, there's so many crimes every minute in this city, and we can only respond to 6%. Not fix, just respond. So you're not gonna fix anything. This job is not that job." So he rolled his eyes at that initially, but later on, I think he changed his mind.
Because at the end of the movie, well, I don't want to get to the end of the movie yet. I want to say they make it to the top. Mama has a device in her arm that says that if her heart stops, then there's C4 that's wired on each, like on 50 floors of this thing. And if those things collapse, then the rest of the building goes down. Mm-hmm. And he goes up there and I guess he measured like how many meters it is from each like explosive or whatever that gets to the bottom, like from the top of the building to the bottom of the building.
Right.
And he gives her slow-mo to basically, I guess, to slow her heart rate down.
I think he was just torturing her with the slow-mo. But he had a one-liner where he was like, "What's the range on that thing?" And then he throws her off the balcony. But you're right. The building's huge. This is a big important. This is really important now because she was like, with this bomb, I can take out floors. I think she said like 76 and up. And he's like, "Oh, what's the range? Can you do it from the bottom fucking floor?" And he throws her off. And obviously she goes all the way down, hits the floor, and the range is no good.
And when she hits the floor, man, whoever made that camera angle, I was like, good God.
Yeah, she comes splattering onto the camera. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good shot. I mean, and it was real slow. You can because it's 3D. Right. 3D is like real slow. Right. So it's like which makes me think like, how do you think this movie's? Oh, it looked great. It looked like it was shot 2-3 years ago to me.
I mean, no, to me it just like, I think just the tone and the style, it felt dated, and
because you're spoiled with Marvel movies. That's why.
Maybe, I don't know. It looked dated, and I was surprised. I wasn't expecting it to look dated, and when it did, it kind of made me sad because I'm like, oh, I guess I'm dated now.
Would you feel the same way of watching another movie that came out the same year of the first Avengers movie?
I haven't seen the first Avengers movie in a long time, so I have to rewatch it. So I don't know. Yeah. I can't tell you. But what's it called? The Dark Knight Rises came out that same year too, and I don't feel like that looks nearly as dated as this one does. I think one of the reasons why it looks dated is because this movie, unlike the 1995 version, this movie was a much smaller budget film. So again, that's why they kept the film almost all in one building. it's really just one setting. So I think the smaller budget made things look cheaper than I thought they were going to look. Not that the movie looks cheap. The movie looks great. It doesn't look cheap at all. I mean, it looks great, but I was surprised that the movie looked old, because I don't think of this movie as an old movie. So I was kind of surprised by that.
Yeah. So it's really that's the biggest difference between the 1995 version with Sylvester Stallone and this one. Is this one's rooted more
in reality,
than a fantasy futuristic 500 years in the future.
Right. The 1995 version was pretty much a cartoon compared to this one. But it
was such
it's not bad. That's just tonally, it's just very different. I liked both of these movies. I liked them both a lot. But like I said, they are very different, very, very, very different films, and they don't really have a lot of overlap except for the name Dredd and the phrase "I am the law" and maybe the gun, and that's it. Outside of that, there's really no overlap. They're very, very different. Also, more accurate to the comic, Karl Urban's Judge Dredd never takes off his helmet. So he's helmeted the whole time, where Sylvester Stallone, you could tell he couldn't wait to take that thing off. He looked kind of embarrassed to be in it in the first place.
That was probably in his contract.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's Sylvester Stallone. He's like, you're going to show my face. That's the end of it.
You're going to show my face.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I give the 2012 version of this movie, I don't know, I have to give it an 8.2 to me personally, because it's like I wanted more. And actually, to be honest with you, I wanted a sequel.
Yeah, and this felt like the first of a series, because again, it kept things very, very small, and we didn't learn much about Dredd the human, Judge Dredd the human, or anything like that. But you could feel that there was a lot there, but that they just didn't really talk about. So this did feel like, it felt like there could have been a sequel here. And also Judge Dredd, like you said, he changes. So at the end of the film, even though Anderson technically failed, he gave her a pass anyway, because she was a good judge. She did everything correctly. It wasn't 100% by the law book, but but it was correct. So I like that he was able to have a little more flexibility at the end of the film.
So both of these films actually set a thing about law. They said something about law to where it shouldn't be so black and white on either side.
Yep.
It should be a gray area, and you said it, just like you said, it needs humanity within.
Exactly, and that's another big point of the film, both films actually, in that in the 1995 Dredd, there was a supreme, what do they call him? Head judge, supreme judge? I can't.
Yeah, supreme judge. Yeah.
So there's a supreme judge who, in order to fix the lawlessness in the city, he wanted to pretty much lock down the city and create martial law. He thought you should be tougher and harder and all this stuff. When in reality, like you said, they probably just needed a little humanity, and that would calm things down a bit. Same with the Dredd 2012. I think what Judge Dredd learned was that being so mean and cruel does not really get you anything. It doesn't really help. But being a reasonable person, an actual human, and treating other humans like humans can get you further along. And so it's kind of hard to see that and watch those two movies and not think about current events, where people they just seem to have some people seem to have like lost their humanity. They just interpret the law coldly and without thinking about the people.
It's written in that book that needs to be rewritten or thrown away.
Yeah, right. In the 1995 Judge Dredd literally walked around with the book. He literally had the book in his hand.
Yep. And you know, the thing about it is, like, if you look at both of them, a woman on each side of the movie is the one who brought the character of Judge Dredd back down to Earth.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm. That's right. There was a woman who, in both films, who grounded this guy who thought he was in complete control of himself when really he was out of control because he lost himself to his job.
Yep.
So you gave the movie 8. I'll probably give it an 8 too.
Yep.
These movies, neither one of these movies, the 1995 version or the 2012 version, neither one's perfect, but they're both really good, and I do recommend watching them. I think I would recommend the 1995 version over the 2012 version because I just had a lot of fun watching that one. That was a blast. The 2012 version is not a lot of fun because, like you said, it's very gruesome and hard and cold, but it's still a really good movie. But there's not like jokes or anything like that in that film. So,
and within both of these films, you're gonna find a little bit of comic book accuracy within both. So,
yep. I read like maybe 1 or 2 of the comics, but it really wasn't like my cup of tea. Both movies, the comics are from like an era of comic books where like the 80s, 90s, where everything is really hard and harsh. And I feel like they do strange things just to try and shock you. And to me, I think that's boring. I thought it was kind of dull. So I didn't really get into the comics. So I can't tell you exactly which one is more comic book accurate, but.
Right. Yeah, me neither. Yeah. I was a Spider-Man guy all day. Scarlet Spider type of comic book reader, the clone of Spider-Man of Peter Parker. Right. That was my series.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's the 90s, 90s comics. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but that's what we got here for you on this episode of Mostly Wrong Opinions Rewind Special. I am Tyrone. You can find me and my information at my Instagram, my band's Instagram at Yerp_ATL, and I also stream at twitch.tv/YerpNationGaming, and I have another channel for reactions. You guys should get on there. Some good stuff. It's Yerp Nation Reactions. You can find me there, and you can find me here on Mostly Wrong Opinions with this gentleman.
I will co-sign that your reactions are really good, and people should really check them out. But you can you can find me right here in Mostly Wrong Opinions. I also have an Instagram at DevinHarris29, and you can also find me on TikTok. So I'm there too. Tyrone's on there too, but whatever. Who cares about him?
I know, right? I just pop my head in and out. A couple of other TikTok videos, but right here, just click that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you'll be updated with our videos. Leave a comment down below what you thought about these films, and leave a like or dislike, whatever it is. It is your opinion, but just remember one thing: it's mostly wrong. You guys have a good day. Peace.
I'm back on my shit and I'm saving the culture. Are we on 10? 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 Are we on 10?